Hey everyone, Shaunna Burhop from Baird & Warner. Thanks for joining us on the Spotlight Series, Property Tax Tips. Today you're going to hear from Michael Corus, and if you'd like to have the detailed presentation slides or be able to have any questions answered, just call, text, or email me, and I will be sure to answer what I can or connect you with Michael. And I hope you enjoy the presentation. Thanks.
First, we'd like to thank you all for joining us today. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Megan Barnitz with Baird & Warner, and I'd like to take a minute to introduce our host of the Spotlight series. First, Mary O'Malley.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
Next, Shaunna Burhop.
Hey everybody.
And then Jason G. and Barbary.
Hey everyone, how you guys doing?
All right, thanks guys. We're very excited to bring you this Spotlight series on property tax tips. Our expert presenters today are Ernie Rose and Michael Corus of DKMO Law, a trusted law firm by all of us here in the Arlington Heights area. Without further ado, I am now going to ask Ernie and Michael to take the reins and begin our presentation. Ernie?
Thanks, Mary, Shaunna, Megan, and Jason for having us. We're happy to be here today. As Megan mentioned, we're a law firm in downtown Arlington Heights. We've been here for 30 years, not me personally, but we've been here for 30 years. And we practice in a variety of areas. In addition to real estate, which I manage, we do business in corporate law, estate planning, probate and trust administration, and commercial real estate and healthcare law. So we try to provide full service for our clients. We're very excited about one area of our practice, which we're lucky enough to have a speaker on here today, Mike Corus, who heads our tax appeals department. So Mike's going to take over and talk from here, and I'll be available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ernie. Thank you again to Megan, Mary, Shaunna, and Jason for having me today. Looking forward to talking about property taxes. I understand those viewing this are generally going to be property owners, most likely in Cook County or perhaps McHenry or Kane County. So the point of the presentation today is for those property owners to walk away with a better understanding of how their property tax bill works, if their property tax bill can be lowered, is it as low as it possibly can be, and a little more understanding as to well as how their property is assessed, what that means, and whether their property is assessed at a fair level. So to get started, we're first going to talk about property tax exemptions. Now, let me get my slideshow moving here. Property tax exemptions are the first and foremost topic of making sure your property tax bill is as low as it can possibly be. An exemption really is a property tax discount. Your property tax bill is always going to be based off of your property's assessed value. A property tax exemption is going to be a discount or a lowering of that assessed value for various reasons. There are three common property tax exemptions. The most common are the homeowner's exemption, the senior exemption, and the senior freeze. If you're a homeowner, you should be getting the homeowner's exemption on your primary residence. If you're over the age of 65, you automatically qualify for the senior exemption on your properties, on your primary residence. And if you're over the age of 65, you also qualify for what's called a senior freeze, which is the most valuable property tax exemption that you can have on your property. And so I want to dive into a little bit more details into these three exemptions, and then we're going to talk about how do I know if I'm getting these exemptions. So first, I want to break down the homeowner's exemption in a little bit more detail. As I stated already, this is only eligible for your primary residence. So each property owner can only be getting a homeowner's exemption on one property. Occasionally, I do have clients who call me with questions because they own a property that they live in. They're also renting a property, and both of those houses are receiving the homeowner's tax exemption. You're only supposed to have it on your primary residence. Also, this property has to be your primary residence as of January 1st. So this comes up a lot when purchasers are purchasing a property in the middle of the year that was a prior rental property. You don't qualify for that exemption in the year you bought the property, but you do qualify beginning the next year. So it has to be your primary residence. You have to be living there as of January 1st of the taxable year. And what is the homeowner's exemption? What's it worth? It's a little different in Cook County versus some of the collar counties, but the good news with the collar counties is that they're all very uniform. So I'm going to jump in a few more slides going forward as to how the assessed value is calculated, the difference between Cook County and the collar counties. But the good news, keep this in mind throughout the presentation, is that the collar counties, although different from Cook County, all the collar counties are uniform in terms of how the values and how these bills are calculated. So in Cook County, the homeowner's exemption is worth $10,000 times the local rate. As Ernie mentioned, our office is in downtown Arlington Heights, so I'm going to use Arlington Heights as our example here. The average local rate in Arlington Heights is about 9.86%. So on average, for your primary residence in Arlington Heights, you should be receiving somewhere around a $986 discount off of your property tax bill. In the collar counties, it's $6,000 times the local rate. So the local rates in collar counties vary widely. So I don't have an example here, but you can kind of do the math in your township. So if your township's local rate is 10%, then your collar county property tax discount should be $600. The homeowner's exemption renews automatically every year, with the exception of the year in which a property is sold. So again, if you're a new buyer purchasing from a prior owner, keep in mind you may have to file that homeowner's exemption one time through the life of your ownership. Any questions on that front, Megan, with the homeowner's exemption? How it works, how it's calculated, and how anyone who owns a property as their primary residence should be receiving this exemption.
We don't have any questions yet at this time.
Okay, great. So again, I've got the next slide here, which is the collar counties. So I have two slides. One is Kane, one is McHenry County. Again, this is the assessor's webpage for each respective county. It explains how the exemption is calculated. And again, very uniform. So throughout, I want to keep in mind whether in McHenry County or Kane County, perhaps Lake County if you're watching this, this is all going to be the same value. So even if I only am referring to Kane or McHenry County, all of the collar counties are going to be uniform. The next exemption, the next most common anyways, is the senior exemption. So again, the senior exemption is only applicable to your primary residence. So everything that was required under the homeowner's exemption is also required for the senior exemption, plus at least one of the homeowners must be 65 years or older. And I'll pause here. I get this question a lot too. The property is owned in trust, and the trustees, I should say, are over 65 years old. They live in the property as their primary residence, but technically the trust is the owner, not the individual. If the individual is over 65 years of age, you are still qualified for the senior exemption. Again, you have to be 65 years of age as of January 1st of that year. So if your birthday is December 31st, you've got to wait a full extra year before you can claim that exemption. You have to be you have to be 65 on January 1st of the year you're claiming that exemption. The calculation for that is $8,000 times the local rate. So again, Arlington Heights properties, the senior exemption is averaging about $788. Collar counties, that'd be a $5,000 multiplied by your local rate. In collar counties, the senior exemption also carried over every year. That used to be not true in Cook County, but the governor recently passed a new law. The senior exemption also carries over every year. So if you were 65 last year. The government has now recognized the fact that you will be over 65 the next year. You no longer have to reapply every year. Megan, any questions with the senior exemption?
Not yet, but we do encourage our participants, if you do have any questions, please feel free to either put it in the question and answer or in the chat screen. You can ask a question at any time. We'll be sure to bring it up to Michael.
All right, great, thank you. So moving on to the next most common and perhaps the most valuable exemption you can receive is the senior freeze. The senior freeze requires everything under the homeowner's exemption and everything under the senior's exemption to be true. 65 years of old, primary residence. And what the senior freeze does once you qualify is it freezes the assessed value of the property. Now, I'm going to jump in a few more slides. I'm going to show you what a tax bill looks like and how the senior freeze appears on a tax bill. On your tax bill, you're never going to actually see the calculation of how the senior freeze was actually computed. You're just going to see the bottom line figure of what it was worth to you. But once your household income is under $65,000 and you're over 65 and it's your primary residence, the senior freeze freezes that property's assessed value at the year in which you qualified. So if you qualified for the senior freeze in 2011, and your assessed value has gone up every year, the value of that senior freeze increases every year because you're only being taxed on your property value as of the year that you qualified for it, so in 2011. This, however, you must reapply every year. So this is the big one. A lot of homeowners, especially senior citizens, sometimes forget because, well, I applied for the paperwork last year, you told me the senior exemption carries over, so now you're confusing the senior exemption with the senior freeze. The senior freeze you have to apply every year because you have to show every year that your income was below that $65,000 threshold. So some people kind of get confused between the senior exemption and the senior freeze. One of them you don't need to apply every year. The senior freeze must be required every year. And sometimes homeowners get confused. They use the term senior freeze and senior exemption interchangeably. They are two very separate and very different in value exemptions. So you got to make sure you're talking apples and apples when you're talking about the senior freeze versus the senior exemption. There's a couple other common exemptions, which I'll go into just briefly. These we don't see quite as often, but I will touch on them, as I said, just kind of overview of them. The home improvement exemption. The home improvement exemption is an incentive for property owners to improve their property. Now, the government understands that if you put a $75,000 addition on your property, that's a pretty significant expense coming out of your pocket. They don't want to now deter that improvement by hitting you immediately with an excessive tax bill. So when, as a property owner, whether you're in the Collier counties or in Cook County, when you're pulling your permit requests to put on that addition or to make some other drastic expensive improvements, the pulling of that permit is automatically going to trigger your home improvement exemption. So again, it's designed to prevent a property owner who's just incurred a significant expense in improving their property. It's designed to protect you from immediately getting hit then with a much higher tax bill because you increased the value of your home. The returning veterans and disabled veterans also receive additional bonuses and tax benefits. These are not as extensive in value as of the homeowner's exemption or a senior exemption, but there is additional benefits there. So if you are a returning veteran or a disabled veteran, you certainly want to make sure that you are receiving all exemptions available to you. And as well as disabled persons, you can also receive a further discount of your property tax bill. Each county is going to be a little bit different in how that you can apply for those. There are certain requirements. There's obviously going to be paperwork required to show that you do qualify for these exemptions. But again, if you are eligible, you certainly want to make sure you are taking advantage of any property tax exemption that you can receive. Which brings me to the next point. How do I know if I'm getting my exemption? So first of all, you want to make sure you know which exemptions you're eligible for. You're eligible for your primary residence, and then based on your age or other certain circumstances, you may be eligible for those other exemptions as well. There's a few different places you can check to look up your property to see whether you are receiving your property exemptions. The easiest, and I've got Cook County up here because collar counties, again, are a little bit different. So for this slide, I'm going to just talk briefly on Cook County. There's 3 different places you can go. You can go to the county assessor's page, and you can do a property lookup, and it will show your history of exemptions there. The Cook County Property Tax Portal will also show an exemption history on the property, as well as a line item of prior tax year bill amounts. But the clearest and the most obvious way you can see whether you received your exemption is looking at your prior year's tax bill. The collar counties, again, the easiest is going to be looking at the property tax bill itself. So here on the right-hand side of the screen, I've got a sample of a collar county property tax breakdown. And on the left-hand side here, I've got a Cook County property tax bill. And I've highlighted where you can see on your tax bill exactly where you're getting or not getting these exemptions. On this Collier County example, you can see the property qualified for both the homeowner's exemption as well as the senior freeze. It is very clearly laid out, and you'll see then how that takes off of the total assessed value, and then multiplied by the tax rate to get the reduced and lowered tax bill. On the left-hand side of the screen, this is a property that is not receiving a homeowner's exemption, senior exemption, or a senior freeze. And you can see that in the lower left-hand corner. Now, what I wanted to point out here again, because I mentioned the senior freeze, if there was a senior freeze on this property, we're not going to know how it broke down or how the county computed the value. And it's not going to tell us which year they're using as the original assessed value. It's just going to simply show up on the property tax bill as a line item reduction of X amount of dollars. So if you don't have a copy of your property tax bill, perhaps you're looking into a property, maybe you're considering purchasing a property, or again, you just don't have access to your old bills, you can look these up online as well. The first example I gave was the Cook County Assessor's property lookup. You go to the Cook County Assessor's website, you'll select the Find a Property dropdown, and you can search either by PIN number or property address. That you'll click search, the search icon, and it will show up the next screen that you'll see here, which shows the property's assessed value. And then there will be other characteristics when you drop down. It's not showing on the screen here, but it'll also break down the prior year's exemptions on the property. Now we'll come back to this note, but I do want to highlight here, if you can see under the characteristics tab here on the left-hand side where it shows the property's estimated value, the prior year's property was estimated at $38,000 or $380,000, and it went up to $429,000. So we're going to go into assessed values in a bit, but this is the property lookup is another source for where you can not only look up a property's exemptions, but it's the quickest way and the only way to tell whether a property's assessed value is going to increase next year. And I'll pause here for a moment. I saw we had a chat come in. Megan, was that a question for us?
Yeah, I was going to take it real quick. There's a question. Do you have a sample for Lake County? So I don't know.
I do not in the slideshow. I don't have a sample for Lake County. However, I want to go back to this prior slide. A Lake County property tax bill is going to have a very similar breakdown as you'll see on the right-hand column here. Again, Kane County, McHenry County, Lake County, they all do things very similarly. So although the right-hand column, I didn't even say which county this is from, because they're all going to look pretty much substantially like what you're seeing on the right-hand side here. So again, if you have a copy of your Lake County tax bill, you should be able to pull that out and see from that breakdown whether you're receiving that exemption or not.
And Michael,
Great.
I thought it would be helpful to explain, as agents, we often get questions when our clients are buying properties. What happens with the exemption if the seller, for example, has a senior exemption, but the new buyer doesn't qualify for that? What happens on that transaction?
That's a great question, Shaunna. That's something that part of our job as the attorneys is to make sure that we're looking up those tax bills and covering that during the attorney review process of a transaction. The solution in your example of when a seller is 65 years or older and selling a property, what do we do in that event? The tax bill is calculated with that exemption included, so long as the seller lived in that property as of January 1st. So let's just say, for example, we're talking about a transaction that's closing right now in May of 2020. So long as the seller lived in that house on January 1st of 2020, even after the transaction closes, that senior exemption should be preserved for the year 2020. So we would calculate those tax credits at closing, knowing that the senior exemption will still be on there. Senior freeze gets a little bit more complicated in that we would probably request that we escrow those funds to make sure that the seller qualified for 2020. But again, the senior exemption we know rolls over automatically.
Great, thanks for that explanation.
Yeah, great question there.
Michael, we got another question about
Sure.
homeowner's exemption. Sometimes we get this a lot. If it was never filed when you purchased, how can you go back? And I know we're talking about a few different counties.
No, that is an excellent question. I'm glad you brought that up. I actually wanted to mention that and I didn't. So thank you for asking. In Cook County, you can go back up to 3 years at least to claim an unclaimed exemption that you qualified for. So I actually just had a client reach out to me the other day. They'd owned the property for several years and had never claimed their exemptions. They're not going to be able to claim every year that they own the property, but you certainly in Cook County can go back at least 3 years and claim those exemptions. This is the only situation where it's more complicated in a collar county. Most collar counties will not allow you to go back and claim an unclaimed exemption. The reason being is that, again, normally those turn over every year, even during the year of a sale. So if it's on there once, it should always be on there. But again, if you missed out on a collar county exemption, you have to make sure that you do apply to get it moving forward, but you generally speaking cannot go backwards in a collar county. So great question. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you.
So now we're looking at the property tax portal. So again, this is another source where you can go to if you're a interested buyer or again, a property tax owner who's not sure whether their old bills, maybe you've got this year's bill, but you don't have your year's past bills. You want another source to find whether you're receiving your exemptions. You can go to the Cook County Property Tax Portal. I've got the website up here, and you can punch in, again, your PIN number or address, and it'll bring you to this next screen, which will show a history. So looking at this right-hand column, I know that this property qualified for its homeowner's exemptions through 2015. I know that one exemption is only the homeowner's exemption because you have to be living there as your primary residence to qualify for anything. So if you're only qualifying for one thing, it would be the homeowner's exemption. Switching gears to looking up in a collar county, this is a little bit simpler here. You can go, and again, I actually think I do have the same slide for, you can see Kane County and McHenry County. These slides are very much duplicative. You can see even this The domain name looks like it's running off of the same computer software, so it's virtually identical in Kane and McHenry County. You would go to this website at the bottom, punching in, again, your PIN or your property address, and you can search for each year to go back to check, again, the assessed value of a property as well as exemptions earned on those PINs. So I've been talking about assessed value a little bit here, but before we switch gears to assessed value, are there any other questions on exemptions, how you qualify for an exemption, how you can check if you have an exemption? And then again, in Cook County, you can file what's called the certificate of error to go backwards to claim those unearned exemptions. All right, so we'll shift gears a little bit then to discuss a property's assessed value. What is a property's assessed value and how does it impact my property tax bill? The assessed value of a property is not the purchase price of the property. It's not the market value of property. It is the assessed value. Now, those two numbers are very closely related. In Cook County, the assessed value is 10% of the market price. So if a property is worth $300,000 on the open market, then your assessed value in Cook County is going to be 10% of that. In the collar counties, the assessed value is 33% of the open market value. So again, same example, property's market value is $300,000. The assessed value is going to be $100,000. And I don't want to go too far down the weeds as to why those are different, but in Cook County, you also have what's called a state equalizer, which is often around 3. Last year, it was 2.91. So you take that assessed value of 10% and then you multiply it by approximately 3. That brings that assessed value up closer to 33%, which is what it would have been in a collar county. So maybe that's a little bit too much of information there, but just a little explanation as to why Cook and the collar counties would have different assessed values. And moving on to that point, the assessed value is then that's what the rest of the bill is based off of. So again, in Cook County, we have the tax calculator. It's on your tax bill. It will show you where they take the assessed value. They multiply that by the state equalizer to then in Cook County, we have what's called the equalized assessed value, which is then multiplied by the local tax rate. In a collar county, on the next slide here, oh, I'm sorry, that's one more. So I'll hold off on that. So in Cook County, you have your assessed value. You multiply that by the state equalizer. So now that's almost 3. And now we've got the equalized assessed value, and we multiply that by the local rate. That gives us the net tax bill. Off of that net tax bill, then we now reduce the homeowner's exemption, the senior exemption, or anything else that would qualify. The reason, again, that this is different is that the Cook County tax bill doesn't show you how that homeowner's exemption is calculated. You're just going to see it. Now, this is a little small, so I'm not sure if you can see, but the local rate in this tax bill example is 9.42%. So on this tax bill, the homeowner's exemption isn't going to show you the math of what it's worth. It's just going to say minus $942 because that is $10,000 times the local rate to get that $924 discount. Now, you can see what happens, though, when an assessed value goes up. And again, I showed you the Cook County Assessor's property lookup page where you can go and check the assessed value of a property. But if we see here, if we input the increased assessed value, then you realize that that is going to be the new number that's placed into that tax calculator. So you could see how an increase by 30 or 60% of an assessed value is going to significantly jump up the tax bill for the next year. So if you look at the right-hand column in this slide, the assessed value of this property went from $263,000 to $323,000. You input that into the prior year's bill, and you can expect a pretty significant tax jump. Now, what that doesn't take into account, though, is the fact that the state equalizer of 2.91 can change, and the local rate can change. Now, those numbers aren't ever going to be available until the release of the next year's bill. So really, when we're trying to estimate a property's assessed value, when we're estimating a property's tax bill for next year, if we're doing a real estate transaction, really all we can go off of is what we know, and what we know is that this assessed value is going to increase significantly. So any questions in terms of how the assessed value is calculated and how that assessed value can really significantly impact a change in a property tax bill?
No, I think we're good at this time, Michael.
Okay, now again, I don't want to forget about the collar counties. So I have here the difference with the collar county now for trying to check what's my assessed value increasing to is actually you want to go to your township website. So in this example, you can look up Elgin Township. You go to your township website, and that's where you can find your assessed value changes there. So again, the difference in Cook County, that information is available off the Cook County Assessor's website, and in a Collar County, the township website is going to be a better source to look up changes in assessed value. And so here again is a bigger screen to just show you how that impact of an assessed value can really bring down or increase a property tax bill. So we've discussed what an assessed value is, but how is my assessed value determined and how often does it change? For those of you in Cook County, you may recognize this sample on the right-hand side here. This is a notice of reassessment. You've probably got this in the mail. In collar counties, again, you check your township website to see the changes in the assessed value. In Cook County, assessed values are reassessed automatically every 3 years. Now, the new assessor has been very vocal about intending to have the assessed values to mirror the market value. So theoretically speaking, if a property has recently sold for $350,000, you can expect that that property's assessed value should be at $35,000, which again is 10% of the market rate. Collar counties are the same thing. They go off of the market values. They usually, though, go with the mean values. So you'll see in collar counties, the purchase price is not often going to be exactly what the assessed value is because they generally go off of the mean of sales in that area. So if you're the one most expensive house, you're the one house that got the best deal on a collar county, you're usually going to fall somewhere more towards the middle of that. Whereas in Cook County, the focus is to try to match the actual market value as much as possible. Now in this example here, I want to point this one out because you can see if you look at this top line, this property has been assessed at roughly $50,000 pretty consistently for the last 4 years, but now it's going to be taking a pretty significant jump starting in 2019. Why is that? Why did this property go up so high? So this would be a result of sales in the area. So whether there's been more development in this neighborhood, there's an increase in sales or what have you, this property, and the property actually sold for just about this much as well. So again, it's showing that the market is mirroring or I should say the assessor's office is mirroring the market to try to match those median values. So For all of you who recently purchased a property or are thinking about selling a property, keep that in mind, whether you're in Cook or in the collar counties, that these tax bills should really be mirroring the purchase price moving forward. So for those of you who so maybe you're this property owner in this example here, you're a Cook County property owner, you've received your assessed value and it's too high. Your bill looks like it's going to go up maybe 30-40%. That's an extreme increase. What can you do about that? Can you appeal your assessed value? And the answer, of course, is absolutely you can. There are three main reasons or grounds for an appeal. And this is in Cook County or the collar counties. I'm speaking generally now for any property tax owner who wants to appeal their property taxes. Generally speaking, you're going to do it on one of these three grounds. Lack of uniformity, which means, hey, I've got the absolute highest tax bill in the neighborhood. Everyone else around me has very similar properties, but their property's assessed value was much lower than mine. That would be a lack of uniformity. Second one would be an overvaluation, so that'd be based on a recent purchase price. So perhaps you recently purchased a property and the assessed value is higher than what you paid for the property. So then, again, as I said, especially in Cook County, the assessor wants to mirror those market prices as best they can. So there, you could appeal based on a purchase price. I will pause here for a second, though. There are some exceptions to this. Sometimes if a property owner, let's say, purchased off of a foreclosure or from a trust or for some other reason, sometimes those purchase prices are not going to be considered persuasive. But generally speaking, an arm's length transaction sale is going to be good grounds to get a price lowered to match that assessed value. And then finally, a third reason, which I'm actually working on right now, the property was vacant or uninhabitable. So this could be because of you're doing home improvements, you've had a catastrophic event, a fire or a flood. These would be reasons to have the property lowered as well so that it can be taxed as a vacant property. And you see this note here, I have a field check request. If your property is currently being under construction or it's demolished, you're going to want to have someone from the assessor's office that's going to drive by to verify that information is true. So you don't want to file a vacant appeal on a house that is clearly standing, and because they will do what's called a field check, where they will actually go out and verify that information is correct. I saw a couple chats come in. Do we have a question here on assessed value or appeals?
I think, Michael, the question says, are the grounds for exemption the same for Lake County, but perhaps they're meaning are the grounds for the appeal? So if maybe you could answer that question.
Yeah, I'll answer it in both terms. If the exemption qualifications, so again, homeowners, seniors, those exemption qualifications are the same in Cook County. It has to be your primary residence for the homeowner's exemption, has to be as of January 1st, and the age limit as well for the senior exemption is the same. You have to be 65 as of the January 1st of that year. Grounds for appeal are the same as well for Cook County and collar counties. Lack of uniformity, a recent purchase price, or again, if the property is vacant. These are all three factors that you would file in Lake County, Cook County, Kane, or McHenry. These are all uniform grounds for appeal.
Hey, Michael?
Yeah.
One other question we have here. Do you have to submit the purchase price if it's higher than the assessed value on an appeal if you recently purchased?
That's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up. Yes. And I found last year we filed several hundred appeals, and in almost every instance when we were filing based on lack of comparable, or based on comparables for a lack of uniformity, where we said, hey, my property got assessed higher than my next door neighbors. If you've purchased within the last 3 years, you have to disclose that purchase price as part of the appeal. And I found in almost every instance where that purchase price was over the assessed value, that appeal was denied. And it does make sense, because if you're trying to say, well, hey, my house compared to the house next door should really be $250,000, but I did just pay $300,000 for it. You know, that's very tough to try to reconcile the argument that the house is worth less than what I just paid for it on the open market. And I found that was denied almost every single time.
Okay, thanks much.
Thank you. So filing an appeal. In Cook County, the appeal deadlines just opened for most of the most of the Northwest suburban townships. The appeal deadlines were just released, so this slide is actually outdated as of about noon today. They just came out with the revised dates, and we didn't update this. But you can file online now, which is one of the biggest changes. Last year, you had to file in person. You can see I've got an example here of the cover page for a 2019 property tax appeal. This had to be printed and filled out in person. Now we can do it online, so it's a much simpler process. And I'm going to go into this in a little bit, but our firm does file Cook County property tax appeals. Homeowners, certainly if you want to file an appeal on your own, you don't want to use an attorney for that, it is possible. You don't need to have an attorney to file an appeal for you. However, it is a complicated process, and as the assessor becomes a little bit more stringent on those market values and is tougher on the comparable properties, we do obviously recommend using an attorney to help you file that appeal, as well as navigating this new online portal. There's a few more different documents that are required. You have to show pictures of the property, etc. So we do recommend going with an attorney, but a taxpayer and property owner could file on their own if they wanted to. Now, again, these dates are not here, but if we go to the Cook County Assessor's website, you can go to appeal deadlines. They will show just posted. And Megan, maybe even if we're going to share this PowerPoint, since they just revised all of these today, maybe we can update this slideshow before we share it, because everything did just get revised, like I said. And you'll see that Palatine, as well as Wheeling Townships, which is most of the areas in Arlington Heights, those appeal deadlines are going to be due this summer in June and July. For the collar counties, however, those websites aren't posted yet. So I went and I looked on Kane County's website. They still are showing the deadlines for 2019. So obviously these deadlines have lapsed. It is too late to file an appeal in 2019, and it is too early to file in 2020. So keep an eye on the Kane County, McHenry County, Lake County townships. Those deadlines have not yet been posted. And also on that note, again, the best resource for your Collar County information is going to be the township website. So again, Cook County, everything's under the Cook County Assessor's website. Kane, McHenry, Lake County, you're going to find a lot more helpful information by actually looking at your township's website or calling them directly. Whenever I get a property tax question for these collar counties, I often just call the township, and I'm amazed with how helpful they are, how quickly they answer the phone, and how generous they are with their information. So I cannot stress this enough for not just Kane County, but for all collar counties. Take advantage of how helpful your township is going to be in answering your questions. I mean, you'll be amazed with how willing they are to walk you through anything that you have a question on there. I see we just had another chat come in, but I can't open the, here it is.
Are you able to see that, Michael? Do you want me to read it?
You know what, you might need to read it because it looks like this is just a private question to Jolene, but I don't see the content of it.
So she's asking, in Lake County, they just received their tax bill on May 9th, and they are due at the beginning of June. Is it too late to appeal? And then how do you work with Lake County? We received 20 to 30% increase. And then she's
Okay.
asking about working with
Yeah.
a condo community as well.
Okay, so if you're in a condo, generally speaking, those condo associations appeal as an entire unit. So if this was a newly purchased property, you would be able to appeal as an individual unit with that new purchase price. But generally speaking, if it is a condo, you're going to want to talk to your HOA to see whether they are appealing as an association as a whole, because how that works is really the association has all of those pins are all correlated. So you take the entire value of the association, and then each percentage interest of that whole is how the tax value is calculated. So you really couldn't appeal just one unit on your own without having access to all of the HOA's recent purchase prices, etc. So I guess the first question would be, if a bunch of units have sold in that association recently at about a 30% increase, that's going to be the reason why that bill went up so high. But again, in a Lake County, the first place you'd want to go is calling your township, because again, they're going to be, first of all, they're there. I've called townships. People are in lockdown right now, shelter in place rule. They're still picking up the phone. They're still answering questions. So I cannot stress that enough, that the township in those collar counties are going to be the best source for a quick answer with something like that. So I hope that answered Jolene's question, unless, is there further info there?
I don't think so. So just, Jolene or if anyone else has the same question, if you're not talking specifically about a condo, there may be a different answer, but.
Yeah, and so you'd want to check again, you'd call your township. And on that note as well, so we're very open about property tax appeals in Cook County. We do them. We do them for our real estate clients. I don't really advertise or solicit property tax appeals in those collar counties. The main reason for that is really it's a whole different process. And most taxpayers will find, after calling the township assessor, it's really quite simple in some of these collar counties. Cook County, it has its complex requirements. It's tougher to find comparables. There's different rules. There's different deadlines for it. It's just more complicated overall. And clients really generally seem to need help. They need someone to do it for them. Collar counties, we've found, after you call the township assessor, you go on the website, it's usually pretty simple. So if anyone out there has already done that and they're still confused and they need some more help, certainly contact me for that, and I'd be happy to help you. But generally speaking, we found that after you talk to your township, there's not much need to call an attorney to help you out with that. But we're happy to do it, of course.
I think that answered the question, so.
Okay, thank you.
Move on.
So I've got, I'm gonna click off. And again, same with McHenry County. So the trend is continuing here. McHenry, like Kane County and Lake County, does not have their data updated yet. So going back to calculating tax savings. So again, this is going on a Cook County appeal. Your deadlines are open. The appeal dates are due either early June or July for Wheeling and Palatine Townships. I want to talk about how we calculate your tax savings. So this is an example here of how we calculate your tax savings. So I've got the Cook County tax calculator up, and we've got your original new assessed value versus your appealed value on the right-hand column here. So if the property's assessed value went up to $500,000, but you contacted our firm, we filed an appeal for you, and we got your value down to $470,000, which is these are realistic numbers. This is pretty common for us. About $800 tax savings is right where we're averaging on our appeals. So this is a very realistic scenario where we could take you from $500 to $4,700. That would result in an approximate 1-year tax savings of $822. So the way we calculate that then is we input the new value into the prior tax year bill, because again, I don't know what the new state equalizer is going to be. I don't know what the new local rate will be, but we know that we were able to reduce that assessed value. So we input those values into the last known rates to calculate what your tax savings would have been. And then we calculate a fee based off 30% of those savings. So if you're in a reassessment year, that's a tax savings that would be good for you for 3 years. So you're getting, in this case, it'd be about a $2,400 overall tax savings, and our firm charges 30% of just that first year's savings. So again, Lake County, Collier County people that need some help, same numbers there. We would charge 30% off of your tax savings. But again, we found, generally speaking, most of our clients in those Collier counties find that they end up doing it themselves. It's the Cook County clients who maybe filed an appeal themselves at the assessor's office and were denied, and then they come calling us for the board of review, say, hey, I tried doing it myself, it didn't work, but we want you guys to help us out. And again, that's just the nature of the appeal process in Cook County. It's a whole different procedure than in the Collier counties. Any questions with how those tax savings works, how the tax bill is calculated on an appeal? And finally, I will point out, if we do file an appeal for you and for whatever reason it is denied, we do not charge for that. So even if we file at the assessor, we file at the board of review, for whatever reason it is not accepted, we do not charge a fee for filing. We don't charge a fee for talking to you about it and emailing you about it. That is no charge to you. It is only a fee if we are successful. Now, this has been coming up. I've been getting this phone call quite a bit in the last couple weeks here, is that I've heard Cook County is making changes to their assessed values and the appeal deadlines. Yes, that is true. And as I discussed, they just posted today those new filing deadlines. What does that mean for me as a property owner? So I went through the Palatine Township appeals that we did last year, and I didn't see any changes from those values that we were lowered. None of them went back up. None of them went down any further. But the Cook County Assessor has announced, and on this page here you can see, they are going to reevaluate properties to take into account that the market has taken a bit of a hit and that some of these assessed values should be reduced further. So again, this is really only a bonus to property owners. If you're living in Cook County, if you're in Palatine or Wheeling Townships especially, you just received a reassessment last year. If you didn't appeal it, or if you did appeal and it was unsuccessful, we'd be happy to help you appeal it. But if we did file for you, or you filed on your own, or another firm filed for you and it went down, I have not seen those properties going back up. It seems to me that this is designed as a bonus only to help people who are maybe overassessed. It's bringing their assessed values down. However, what's interesting about this announcement is that if your property's assessed value did change, the announcement states that they're going to mail you a notification after the appeal deadline is closed. So the assessor's office is going to email you after you cannot appeal with them to say that your assessed value has changed. Now, again, I'm checking the ones that we did. I've showed you where you can go as a property owner now. You can check in Cook County when those values are going to be posted, and you can go online and you can check for yourself whether your value has changed from 2019 to 2020. So you certainly want to keep an eye on that. If it did go up again for whatever reason, certainly that's something you're going to want to appeal, and we'd be happy to help you with that. I have not seen similar announcements for Collier counties. So at this time, I cannot say whether they've also made such announcements that they'll be changing as well. But again, Collier counties, generally speaking, I know we had someone on to say that their Lake County property went up 20 to 30%. That's generally not the case. We find that those assessments are usually much more uniform, and we're talking maybe 5 or 6% increases at a time. So do not expect a drastic increase across the board in those collar counties as we saw last year in Cook County. Any questions with that? Anything else anyone had any questions with? Certificate of errors, exemptions, the appeal process, appeal timeline?
Well, just maybe Michael clarifying. So if there is a COVID related reduction, there's nothing the individual has to do.
That's right. Great question. I'm sorry if that wasn't clear for me. Yeah. So if for whatever reason the assessor has determined that your property was overassessed in 2019, they will adjust it down without any filing or there's nothing needed by the homeowner. Thank you, Shaunna, for clearing that up. That's an automatic reassessment, and that assessment is automatic across the entire Cook County. So again, I have not seen yet on the files that we were working on last year, I have not seen any changes done, but they are reassessing a blanket across the board every property in the area to determine if it needs to be reduced without an appeal from the homeowner.
Great, thanks for answering that.
All right, this is last minute. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat or the question and answer. We'll give you a couple seconds to type in, and then we'll wrap up.
Mike, if someone wants help with the appeals process or just getting information, what's the best way for them to reach out to you, and what information do they need to give you in order for you to look at the file?
Great question, Ernie. So we've got, we're going to have our contact information. We'll share that with Megan, so that should be included on, we'll have that posted on our slide here. You can also go to DKMO's website and you can shoot me an email. You can give me a phone call. Happy and always willing to discuss all things property taxes with anyone who has any questions. And all I really need from you is your address. We can look up your PIN pretty simply. I know where to go to find your assessed values, and I can find your old property tax bills. So all I really need from you is your address. And again, you could reach me by phone or by email, which we will have posted and available on the information with this page.
All right, so thanks so much, Michael and Ernie. Again, on behalf of Mary, Shaunna, Jason, and myself, we do appreciate you all coming by and listening to our Zoom meeting. Hope the tips helped. We will make sure to get the attendees the updated slides with any dates if anything should change. And of course, you're welcome to reach out to your prospective agent or to Michael and Ernie themselves if any other questions do come up. Thanks so much, guys, for everything. And Shaunna,
yeah, thank you for having us. Much appreciated, and looking forward to helping anyone out who's watching or reading this that has any further questions.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, that concludes our Zoom.